Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Marcho, and I am bringing you a new GT2 video. Today's video is a follow-up challenge video from my last one. As this is the first video in the series, my challenge format is a bit rough and further videos will be subject to change. So any and all feedback is very highly appreciated. I am writing the script after attempting the challenge, so I have the benefit of hindsight, but I will try my best to not spoil anything until it comes up on screen. With all that out of the way, let's not beat around the bush, and as a wise man once said, when in doubt, flat out into the video. Since I had an MX-5 from a prior game save, and that goes for all the cars that will be used in this series, I used the data transfer feature, which is essentially like trading in Pokemon, but it works like a car dealership. So you just pay 4 times the sell price of the car to get it. It is impossible to change the car's sell price on a game save to lower it, so that you could buy any car to start the game with without the use of cheats. And also, in order for this feature to work, the cars you are trying to buy must be bone stock. And I mean bone stock. The cars can't have any sort of upgrades applied to them unless they fall into the budget, or you'll just be priced out. And I bought the MX-5 via data transfer because I like this emerald green color, and I couldn't find one available at day 6 in the used dealership. So, first things first, I like to go through the game doing races in order of license requirement, and not in the full series / championship or whatever, because this allows me to have a bit more variety of opponents I'll be facing and lets me build up some credits for upgrades. But if you don't want me to do these challenges in this format, just let me know and I'll do them in order. For the license-free races, I've raced the car without any upgrades, just to see how well it does bone stock, and to challenge myself. Honestly, I was genuinely surprised how well the MX-5 did stock. Maybe the performance of the car was compensated by the rubber banding AI, but I've had some close calls at High Speed Ring and at Red Rock Valley against an S2000, having to block it on the last lap. But that's the Sunday Cup, it was meant to be easy. I only had slight trouble on race 2 of the Clubman Cup, where I beat it on the second try, coming in second on the first. The B-license events started to give the stock MX-5 some trouble. The first races in the GT Nationals are nothing to write home about, bar the American and Italian Nationals, where I again was bested on my first try, coming in second, only to try once more and beat it without much problem. After dealing with those, I initially wanted to do the third race of the Clubman Cup, but decided to leave it for later, since the cars that appear there are rather quick, and I wanted to see how far I'll be able to get without upgrading, so I settled on tackling another menace, which is the Global Compact Car Cup. Race 1 went without a hitch, getting the W on the first try. Race 2 could have been another first try win, but I came in second, losing by a bumper, managing to win by a whole car length on the next try, and now getting to the first wall of the run. Race 3 was a pain, and I was stuck there for an hour trying to beat the competition with a stock MX-5, always managing to get into the lead on lap 2, but not being able to hold on to it through sector 3. With the AI car being a whole second in front, and no matter how hard I pushed the car, the end result was still the same. Having my soul crushed by VW Lupos and Toyota Yaris's, I decided it was time to upgrade. Since I needed just a small nudge to get over the line, I opted to go for a lightweight racing flywheel. While it doesn't directly impact the power figure of the car, it contributes to the car's acceleration quite heavily, since it allows the engine to rev up faster. With the upgrade installed, it only took me 2 tries. The second one was again very close. With that done, I decided to try my luck at the final race of the Clubman Cup. taking place in the full Rome circuit. It didn't bode well. I tried twice, but came in 5th during both tries. Not wanting to waste any more time, I went back to the Mazda dealer's tuning section and slapped some new rubber on alongside a carbon drive shaft to aid in acceleration. Got the win on the first try, largely due to the super softs allowing me to perform some late braking shenanigans. Next on the hit list was a race against some estate cars, which was a breeze with a faint scent of death coming off the opposition. Maybe they're racing to the cemetery or the Vatican, since the race took place on Rome Short. This race marks the end of all available National B license races, so onto the National A license events. Starting off with the easier ones, so every second national event was beaten without much problem with the help of the upgrades acquired from before. I was rather confident on the third national races, but I did manage to beat the third race of the German nationals. But I got lucky there since the roof that usually shows up didn't. The third race of the British Nationals was a close second on the second try, but at the time of recording I was rather exhausted and I didn't want to waste any more time, so I opted to upgrade. So this time round I fully upgraded my drivetrain, differential included, and I managed to clear it. With the same upgrades, I took on the third race of the American Nationals, which was a rather close first try victory, but unfortunately for us, there were no AI wipeouts at the corkscrew. Race number 3 of the Japanese Nationals was the most difficult, since Midfield Raceway is a power/top speed oriented circuit, so my initial attempt got me second place, after which I went straight to the tuning section and slapped a turbo on the MX-5. With the turbo, the race was pretty much a breeze. With the nationals out of the way, let's move on to the special events. Number 1 on our list is the first race of the FR Challenge. Since the competition here is a tad underwhelming, I decided to take off the turbo, transmission, and the triple plate clutch to make the race a bit more challenging. Now that I'm writing this, I probably should have taken off the super softs as well, but what is done can't be undone unless I go out of my way to re-record that race, but I won't for the sake of my sanity. Next up is the first race of the World Open Car Cup, for which I did indeed took off the super softs and still managed to get the W on the first try. To be fair, you could do that race bone stock without a problem. Keeping the low power trend, I decided to tackle the first race of the 80s Sports Car Cup, which I won, but this race is a bit special than most others. Well, this whole cup is a bit more special than the others, since all of the races are 3 laps in length, and all of the cars are from the 1980s. Variety! After that, I went back a little bit and took care of race 1 of the Luxury Sedan Cup. I had put all upgrades back on for this one, bar the turbo, and I won the race on the second try, coming in 4th on the initial attempt. Having decimated the sedans, I had set my sights on the next challenge in page 2 of the special events section, and that challenge being the race 2 of the Historic Car Cup. Before doing race 2, we have to take care of race 1, which was more or less a joke. I thought I was ready for the battle up ahead, but alas, I was not. After slapping the boosty boy back on, having around 180 horsepower, I tried twice to defeat the probably biggest cheater in the game that was present across all versions, the 1966 Ford GT40 road car. That bad boy is very much a race car for the road, having adjustable everything. The rubber band kept him rather close, but quite a ways out of reach. So after 2 failures, I was forced to get some more boost. And to go alongside said boost, I decided to get a racing muffler and a racing chip. Now running almost 100 more horsepower, I went straight in. I was rather hoping that he wouldn't show up, but he didn't. But Lady Fortune smiled upon me, and the GT40 started in midfield, so he had to get past traffic, which allowed me to get an early lead. But I botched the hairpin after the Coliseum by braking way too late, which in turn cost me the race. Determined to beat this cheater, I messed with the car's tuning settings and took on the lead on the second to last corner of lap 1, and I held it until the end of the race, taking the victory. Turning to page 3 of the special events section, I decided to tackle the favorite pastime of a dead American, estate car oval racing. To raise the stakes a bit, I decided to take the Boosty Boy and some other power amplifiers off, and sure enough, a flawless victory first try. And now for the final National A license event that doesn't include rally. It's the first race of the Pure Sports Car Cup. I decided to put on a Stage 1 turbo, which might have been a bit overkill since on both attempts I took the lead without much problem. But me being me, recording well deep into the night, I spun on lap 2, going down the corkscrew. At least I managed to get the win on the second try, and I didn't spin. But on both attempts, a Lotus Europa had spun out on the corkscrew, so that's something. Before you go, but Marzo, you have rally events to do and stuff. I didn't do them, since I felt like you'd be using a dedicated rally car or a Pikes Peak dirt trial car for that, and that goes for enduros as well. But if you'd like to see me do rally/enduro events, just drop a comment down below. And now, back to the video. Onto the license that has never appeared after GT2. It's the IC license. The events are rather lackluster, but they serve as a sort of an intermediary/bridge to prepare the player for the more difficult events, which kind of sounds reasonable, but I think it's a bit redundant, and so did Polyphony. That's why they didn't include it in any other GTs after GT2. Well, maybe they will include it in GT7, but who knows? Only time will tell. Okay, so first off, we have race 2 of the FR challenge. I think I had the car nearly fully upgraded, so I just smoked the competition without issue. Next up, again race 2, but of the luxury sedan cup this time. Same track as well, SSR5. The thing I noticed with this license is that it just loves this track in particular. It doesn't help that the IC license has like, what, 5 races or something, but still. Okay, time for some variety. Heading into the final race of the historic Car Cup, I dominate the field by the GT40, which was on my rear for the entire race, but I still managed to get the win. Next, we are wrapping things up with the Dead at Night in race 3 of the Estate Car Cup, back in the now infamous special stage Route 5, dominating the field. I'm sorry that this section is a bit boring, and I had the car almost fully upgraded for all the IC races. Since it was very late, I was very tired and also bored. Next race, and oh boy, it's a special one. 3 laps against the sports cars of yesteryear in the dead of night. That's right, it's race 2 of the 80s Sports Car Cup, taking place in none other but the one-gun-esque special stage Route 5, where I utterly decimate the living legends. Pushing onwards with the end in sight, we go into the race 1 of the GT Car Championship, taking place in none other but the fabulous Red Rock Valley Speedway, which I utterly dominated as well. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, at least I've been waiting for. The final race that isn't a rally race of the IC license, it's race 2 of the Pure Sports Car Cup, taking place in Deep Forest. That was pretty darn easy, and very satisfying. Taking the left-hand sweeper into the back straight, it's crazy how good it feels to nail it. Maybe it's more akin to the touch of a woman, but I cannot make such a comparison since I was never touched by a woman before. The IB license. This is where things get interesting. I like the IB license events, purely because they do exactly what the IC license was setting itself out to do, but not falling flat on its face. The event difficulty ramps up in this one, purely on the more powerful slash souped up cars that the AI will be driving. Also, the IB license gives you access to your first Enduros of GT2, so that's something. Okay, enough chit chat, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the IB events. Taking a step further to the GT worlds, we have the continental events. These are 2 series of events with 3 races each. The AI will be driving cars from makes of the respective region, i.e. if it's Europe, the AI will be driving European cars, if it's Asia Pacific, Japanese American cars, since there aren't any Korean manufacturers in the game. So starting with the European Continental Cup, Race 1 takes place at Apricot Hill, one of my all-time favorite tracks in the franchise, and especially in GT2, since the AI have a tendency to, well, I think it will be for the best to show you. On to race number 2. This time the win brings us to the Grand Valley Speedway. Similarly to race 1, the have a tendency to way overshoot the first corner, which leads to some hilarious situations. Akin to the AI, I decided to overshoot the first corner on the final lap, while having to dive bomb a TVR Cerbera, which overtook me leading into the straight, having to really try to get this win, since it really came down to the last corner. To wrap things up in Europe, we are on another mission to meet the head of the Catholic Church, meaning we are back in Rome, baby. And to be quite honest, it was a bit of a snooze fest. Well, the roof had me fight him for the lead up until we were going back around the Colosseum, and after that, kind of gave up. Not that it didn't stay close or anything, but it didn't, or rather couldn't find an opportunity to attack, probably due to the Cerbera finishing in second, but a win is a win. First half done, now for the second. Race 1 at the Pacific Cup takes me to Midfield Raceway, a very difficult circuit. Not that it's overly complex or anything, but it emphasizes the need for top speed. And unlike the other top speed heavy circuits, it doesn't have much in the way of cheesing. The race was rather difficult and tense, since I only managed to get into the lead on the final lap, but I managed to get the win on the first try, so that's nice. Leaving Japan for the US, for race 2 and 3, we are going to Seattle and Laguna Seca respectively. Race 2 was a struggle since my controller kept acting up and I've been dead last for most of the race, but the rubber band came in clutch and I somehow managed to win the race on the final turn on lap 3. Same cannot be said about race 3. On my first try I was winning and on track to win, but I crashed into the pit wall on the last turn on the final lap and came in second, behind an NSX. So I tried again and had no problems. Everything went smoothly and I got the W. Well, I almost spun out on the final lap, but we don't talk about that. Better yet, look at how the AI cars are faring against the mighty Corkscrew. The rest of the IB events were rather, well, uneventful, if I do say so myself. Just more of the same. Even the Super Touring Car Trophy, which features the BTCC Super Touring era cars, was pretty dull. Even gimping myself was not very helpful in increasing the entertainment value. Now for one of the 3 actual championships in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the GT300 Championship. I knew it will be difficult going in, but I really didn't expect it to be this nail-biting. After several attempts trying to get a more favorable AI lineup, I was fed up with constantly failing and dropping the series midway through. This being my last race of the night, by the way it's not the same night as the BA and IC and IB license races, I decided to at least get one full attempt done and dusted. The opposition consisted of a Cusco Impreza, a Ari Amemia RX-7, a Daishin Sylvia, and 2 Craft Truenos. Race 1 of 5, Grand Valley East. Race starts off rough, crashing into a tunnel wall at lap 1 and falling behind on the straight. 4.5 seconds behind on sector 1 of lap 2. I was forced to be a bit careful on the short section over the crest because of the weight transfer, which allowed me to catch up at about 0.9 seconds passing sector 2, heading into the tunnel. Having a bit of a pull down the straight really helped me, as was going into the tunnel on lap 3. I am right on the tail of my opposition, heading into the start/finish straight, nailing the chicane leading up to it. Having posted a personal best lap, heading past the first sector of lap 4, I am 1.7 seconds down. On the overtake in the downhill right-hand sweeper, almost losing the rear, managing to hold and losing the 5th place spot. Heading out of the tunnel and into the chicane, having the EI piling up, I found an opening and managed to get in 2nd place behind the Daishin Sylvia, holding back one of the Truenos and allowing the Impreza and RX-7 to pass on the straight as I get them back on the first turn. Not quite getting the maneuver done on the RX-7, it speeds off into the front while the Impreza got passed by one of the Truenos, leaving it in 5th. Going into the crest chicane, I managed to pass the leading Trueno and claw my way back to 3rd. Using a dive bomb, I managed to get past the RX-7 on the right-hand sweeper, but not making it stick. Still having the inside line heading into the tunnel, I managed to send the RX-7 barreling into the tire wall, which secured my spot on the podium, heading down the chicane outside the tunnel onto the final straight. First is way beyond reach, with the Sylvia being 1.4 seconds ahead. Now to defend, I try blocking the RX-7, which was in my draft, and as I failed to keep it behind me, we both cross the line and I come out on top by a mere 0.008 seconds. As I do, a sigh of relief. I look at the finishing order. The Sylvia is in first, me in the MX-5 in second, RX-7 in third, the Truenos taking fourth and fifth, and the Impreza bringing up the rear in last place. I couldn't have wished for a better start to the series. Well, maybe me being in first and both the Truenos coming in second and third. But this was a phenomenal race, a great taste of things to come. Race 2 of 5 at Laguna Seca. I start off pretty strong, passing the Impreza in the first few turns, but losing the spot right after. Not much happened up until I reached the corkscrew, managing to pass the RX-7 and Impreza, heading into turn 9 on the inside, grabbing third from the Sylvia in the process. Keeping really good momentum, I managed to pass one of the Truenos, leading up to the final corner. The combination of me hitting the outside wall and not being very powerful, I lose 2 places. Going into the Andretti, I struggle with the Sylvia for fourth, managing to hang on. Having a decent run out of the 2 right-handers, I bumped the rear of one of the Truenos as I failed to pass it, which I rapidly remedy by passing it on the inside of turn 6. Braking early onto the corkscrew. Going down the corkscrew, the car gets a bit squeamish, and I almost lose it. Still managing to get a good run up to the final corner, inside the RX-7 with a cheeky dive bomb. I managed to pass it, but failed to make it stick on the straight, with the Impreza looming behind, heading into the Andretti for the 3rd time this race, getting past the RX-7 once more. Now it has to contend with the Impreza, and look at that, the Sylvia just barged through both of them up to 3rd place. Fails to pass me, but the Impreza tries going into turn 6 on the inside. I tried the crossover, but failed miserably, crashing into the wall, dropping down to 5th. Bit more aggressive down the screw, getting a great run to turn 10, and into the final turn, but I failed to pass anyone. After getting a good run out of turn 5 and 6, I managed to get the Trueno on the inside and make it stick. A bit poor through the corkscrew on the predominant time in this race. Getting a phenomenal run down to turn 10, I managed to T-bone the Sylvia on T11 and make it stick somehow as I head into the final lap, trying my hardest to close the gap on the 2 fastest cars in the grid, but to no avail. I finished the race in 3rd place, taking 3rd in the points. The midway marker for the championship, aka race number 3, takes place at Deep Forest. Starting off really well into turn 1, managing to pass the Impreza. Into the S's, I managed to get by the Sylvia, going into the Hammerhead. Out of the 2nd Hammerhead tunnel, I managed to pass one of the Truenos, going into the left sweeper, nailing it, and sitting on the RX-7's rear, going into the back straight, braking hard, and losing some speed. Going into the final turn, I managed to turn in too early and crash into the outer wall, leaving me dead last. Pushing hard through sector 1 and 2 on the back straight, sitting on the Sylvia's rear, I get a much better back straight exit, and I managed to close the gap onto the start/finish straight to get a chance to pass, which I do and make it stick, going up into 4th. Rest of the lap wasn't so eventful, bar the final turn, which I nailed and managed to pass a Trueno heading into lap 4, somehow managing to mess up the first turn, lost all progress, and dropped down to 6th. I was seriously contemplating on quitting this, but I decided not to, and kept on going. The rest of the lap was just me trying to close the gap, which I managed by nailing the final turn and getting some ground back. On turn 1, in the Hammerhead complex, I climb another 1 position up into 4th place, somehow messing up the left-hander. I managed to get past the Sylvia, up into 3rd now, getting my hopes up. In the braking zone of the predominant turn, the Sylvia passes me momentarily as I get the crossover to stick, absolutely demolishing the final turn. Having the fastest run out of it, by some miracle, I managed to outpace both the RX-7 and Impreza before the line, taking my first victory in the series, putting me on top of the leaderboard in the points. Pulling such a huge comeback, it felt incredible. With a slight point lead starting race 4 at midfield. As I've previously stated, midfield is a very difficult track in a low power machine since it is very heavily skewed towards top speed without many sections that would allow me to catch up, i.e. the left hand sweeper on Apricot Hill right after the S's. I honestly think I could have bagged 3rd place at the very least if it wasn't for the spin on lap 1 coming right out of the tunnel bridge, since that has left me dead last and way out of the leader's slipstream range, even after managing to claw back to 4th. The podium gang was way out in front, leaving me in 4th with 3 points to my name for this race, and in a tie for the lead with 21 points, with 3rd place being a tie with 20. 4 cars in the running for the title, only 1 race left in Apricot Hill. Apricot Hill is very similar to Midfield Raceway in terms of being heavily skewed towards top speed and power, but it has a lot of mid-speed corners and complexes compared to Midfield, which has a lot of low-speed sections. This, with the fact I can easily cheese the chicane at the end of the lap, made me sure of my victory. So after a bit of messing around in the settings, I dove right in. Managing to get past all of the competition on lap 1, I firmly held the lead for the rest of the race. To say the race was uneventful would be an understatement, but the most important fact is that I managed to beat the championship and take home the trophy. Now to tie up some loose ends and some new knots. Cleaning up the IA events was pretty easy, all of what was left apart from one single race. A race that has tested my patience and my ability to keep the car at a constant speed. That race being the second race of the Tuned Turbo Car Cup in test course. This race was like the R34 slipstream battle driving mission, but I had no real slipstream up until the end of the race. It was a real struggle, but I managed to overcome it. Other 2 races in the series were fairly easy, and I got the W without much issue. The rest of the IA events were mostly a repeat of Continentals in terms of car lineup and power level, so they were not super interesting. Even the Muscle Car Cup, since the AI surprisingly didn't once die, i.e. crash into a wall and just sat there. After this, I decided to give GT All-Stars a crack. To those who aren't in the know, GT All-Stars is a single race series which replicates the GT Worlds in terms of opposition. The track lineup for this series is Super Speedway, Special Stage Route 5, Red Rock Valley Speedway, Rome Circuit Full, and Laguna Seca. This is a great chance to scout out any problem cars to avoid if you're going for GT Worlds. Plus, this series has some very neat cars up for grabs. So, race 1 at Super Speedway. I was very skeptical about even winning one race in this series, but I did win this one on my first attempt, which gave me some hope that the car is quick enough to where I can manage to keep up with the opposition, thanks to rubber banding. But I was sadly mistaken. Every other race in the series had me coming in dead last. My best result was 4th place at Red Rock Valley, and even then it was a fluke. So I ditched the All-Stars and went straight for the Worlds, and guess how that panned out. If you chose C, you are correct. But yeah, this wasn't a shock, but I was hoping that I could have managed to do a bit more. Maybe it's the car being at its limit, maybe it's me being at my limit, who knows? But for what I know now, that this car cannot beat the game, it is rather unfortunate, but that's life. Oh, and I almost forgot, I did try the GT500 series, but it didn't go anywhere. I came in dead last, bar the Super Speedway race, in which I got first again. It seems the AI isn't very good on that track, and my footage of the attempt got corrupted, so you'll just have to take my word for it. So, let's talk about tiering. The MX-5 was very good. It really didn't struggle at all through just getting through the game if you had fully upgraded prior, and even then in its base form it was very solid, apart from, well, obviously the late game where you are probably using fully fledged race cars and or rally cars. So let's just use the MX-5 as a benchmark for other cars. I'm not gonna put it above or below. I'm just gonna have it in the middle, and we'll see how everything pans out. Just how good the other cars are compared to the MX-5. And with that out of the way, thank you very much for watching if you've made it to the end of the video. The next challenge video will most likely be on the MR2, but don't quote me on that. If you have some critique, please feel free to leave it down below. And on that note, I've been Martso, and I hope you have a great day.